Cool. Well, I really am thankful that Derek was able to join us today. For those of you, I think that almost everybody on the call probably knows Derek, either through training or as a being a part of the team here. Derek's been with us a number of years. He actually started out as a part of Ray Plagan's team, and we'll let him tell his story a little bit. But he's become one of the top agents, not only in our territory, but in the country. He's really done some incredible things over the last number of years. And I think there's been some points in his career where he's made some key decisions and made some key investments in things like a storefront that really enhanced his income and enhanced what he was doing in the business. But Derek, I just want to kind of start off with like maybe just you sharing with everybody, and a few people have heard it before, but others may not have. Just a little bit of your story, how you ended up at Health Markets, where you came from, how long it's been. Just maybe some context around that would be a good place to start.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll get to the story about the bed bugs here in a moment. But kind of when I started just working in general, my dad owned a construction company when I was a kid. So I always had to do like all the grunt work. So, he was paying me a few bucks an hour, taking me to McDonald's after, putting in 8, 10 hours on the job site. And quickly realized that construction and all that hard work wasn't for me. So he was always a really hard worker and kind of give me a really good work ethic growing up. And so it's something I've always kind of continued. But then, before I was with Health Markets, I was, even out of high school, I was working retail, working sales jobs. I worked at Best Buy. I was a manager at an Office Max store and for Sprint's cell phone stores. And, enjoyed what I did somewhat, but it really felt like it was a job, not a career. And so, going into this, I'm sure most of you have heard this story, but I'll give you kind of the cliff notes. I was 30 years old and I was really at a crossroads in my life. 2 young kids, kind of unsure of, what the next step was. I was really just kind of tired of working for the man. Had all these jobs where I was working hourly and really not getting paid for what I was bringing to the table, was just making an hourly wage. So it was at that kind of a crossroads, and that's when I lost my job at Sprint, which was actually probably the best thing that's ever happened to me financially, was that happening. And I'm sure most of you have heard the story, but ended up wanting to take this job here at Health Markets, but my wife would have killed me because it was a straight sales commission job, and there was, no set income that I was definitely going to bring into the household. So especially with 2 young kids, that was going to be tricky. So for those of you who haven't heard it, I'll give you kind of the quick rundown. I actually took a job for Orkin Pest Control. So, went through the interview process, I think it was 60 grand salary is what I was going to make. The hours were going to be horrible. It was like every Saturday. It's pretty much 6 days a week. And so I made it through about a 5-hour shift before I quit. I went into Elkhart, saw my first bed bug, saw my first cockroach, kind of had a better idea of what the job was going to be. And so when the guy who was my trainer dropped me off, he told me to take off my shoes and put them in the basement and wrap them up, because if I had any bed bug eggs on my shoes, I was probably going to be infested in a couple of days. So that's when I told him I didn't think this job and this career was for me. So I quit that job and actually ended up starting with Health Markets that same day. Ray Plagans happened to have his grand opening that day at his storefront. So I quit this job at about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, ran over to the Elkhart office with the old territory vice president, Tom Sandlin, signed my papers to become an agent, and then went to Ray's grand opening. So Ray was even talking about it yesterday at golf. I kind of met him, introduced myself, and from there, he went to go cut the ribbon at the grand opening. Like, he had the big scissors, the ones that are 8 feet long. So he had those scissors, and he was giving his speech. He had Jackie Walorski up there. He had WNDU, like the local news station up there, all these new agents, all these people there. Silas was there. And he's giving his speech, and he said, I've had some people, with the organization for 20 years, and there's this new fellow. What's your name? Daryl? Daryl, come over here. Daryl's been here for about 5 minutes. We just met, so he had butchered my name. I didn't even have the cojones to even say anything. I just went by Daryl. I was like, sure, I'll be Daryl. And then kind of cut the ribbon at the grand opening there with Ray. And so I'll never forget having to talk to my wife. All this happened before she was a teacher, so she'd get off at like 3:30, 4 o'clock. And so she called me. She's like, hey, how'd the first day go? And I was like, well, I quit. I got a new job. I cut the ribbon at the grand opening, and I start tomorrow. So going into this, like I knew nothing about health insurance. I didn't know what a deductible was. I didn't know what a copay was. I was not licensed. I was trying to look for other opportunities, but it just really limited, no college education, a good work ethic, but, I didn't have the financial stability to, be a State Farm agent or be, some of these other organizations, for something that was like a commission sales job where I could really kind of, earn my keep and really got paid for what I did. So this really kind of fell somewhat into my lap. It was fate. It was lucky. I'm not sure how it all came about, but, it's been a huge blessing for me and my family, really kind of just giving me the stability, allowed me to work the hours that I want. So that way, I can coach my kids' softball and baseball teams. I can pick my kids up from school. I even brought my puppy into work today. So like you can really make this whatever you want. And that's one of my favorite things about health markets and kind of the career path that I'm on. And I always tell new agents, like, you have to have the passion to want to do this. You have to have the passion to want to help people. Like, I still feel like I don't come to work. Like, it's just what I do every day. And so I still don't feel like this is a job or this is work. Like, I'm helping people, and there's very few places you can be and companies that you can be with where you want, like, I want to be here. Like, I enjoy myself. I enjoy working with my colleagues. And I have a passion for helping people, and I get paid a tremendous amount of money to do that. So definitely in a good spot.
Well, and you make it look effortless, man. I've watched, you didn't start off on my sales team. I feel very blessed and fortunate that eventually we've had the opportunity to work together the way we do today. Obviously close business partners and good friends, but you didn't start off on my team. And so I always watched. I remember I was at a celebration with you. It might have been your first celebration. And I remember we maybe had a couple of cocktails that evening and we were talking, and I'm like, I'm so angry that you didn't end up on my team. You ended up on Ray's team to begin with, and then things come back around and we end up, years later. So I don't remember when was that ribbon cutting? When was your first day? Like what year was that?
It'll be 10 years ago, I think October 1st. So
October.
I believe it was like October 1st was Ray's grand opening. So it'll be exactly 10 years. So yeah, I had no license, nothing. So I got my license and got everything ready to run. I think my first day like in the field was November 1st. So I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I just thought there was going to be a line of people outside of Ray's store waiting to talk to me. Like, I wasn't sure like how I was going to obtain clients, how I was going to go about any of that. So I was totally green and naive, which probably helped at the beginning. So
yeah. So I know it was 10 years ago, but do you remember some of the things that you did in that first few months to year to kind of get your business off the ground? I mean, I think that's what a lot of new people struggle with, is like, what do I do? Where do I go find clients? How do I engage with somebody that wants to buy a product from me? Do you remember what you did?
Yeah, well, and my brother-in-law sold life insurance. And so he was like hounding every single one of like my family members to like sign up with life insurance with him. So like didn't really want to go after like my family. Like, I don't know, it just kind of felt sleazy. Like, hey, I don't even really know what I'm doing. I don't want to, show my family members, these products that I don't even know what I'm talking about. And so really when I started, very little resources, I'm seeing Tony and Ray, they have commercials and they're doing all this marketing and these T65 leads and all these other things. And, I didn't have the resources to do that. Really only thing I could do was outwork people. And so like, that was always my goal. I was like, hey, I don't have the resources or maybe the education level as some of these other people, but I know that I can outwork everybody. And so that was really my thing. I pounded the phones harder than anyone. And I just knew, hey, if I put in the time, if I kind of keep that flow of, even just talking to clients, even if I'm not making a sale, even just interacting with people, will kind of help my practice and help my business. And so I hit the phones hard, especially 10 years ago, probably as many people weren't texting. I was texting quite a bit. And I was also working when I thought all of my other colleagues were not. And so like, I worked every Saturday and Sunday when I started, probably for the first 2 years, because I just knew, hey, like a Ray Plagans or, somebody, Steve Cavajola, they don't need to work on Saturday and Sunday, So I just said, hey, there's probably more opportunity for me when these other people aren't working. So I just wanted to be a little bit different. So yeah, really just pounding the phones. I had 2 cell phones at all time. I had my Bluetooth on, and I would just sit there and pound the phones all day. Um, so probably at least made at least 100 calls every day, um, pretty much 7 days a week when I started, and really put a ton of time in, especially those first 2 years. And then I probably slacked off for 6 or 7 years after that because I got a good thing rolling. And that's the biggest thing about this business is, once you get this thing rolling, once you're used to making those contacts and putting in that time, everything really comes together. You just got to give yourself, a year and a half, 2 years. But then once everything starts clicking, it's a beautiful thing.
Do you still make a ton of outbound phone calls today?
No, um, honestly, I make 0 phone calls. Um, I've got a full-time assistant and another part-time who, are doing most of my outbound calls. Honestly, guys, 90% of my business is referrals. So I pretty much have created it where everybody's coming to see me and just really trying to give my client the best experience that I can for them to want to send their friends and family to me. And so like that's always kind of my biggest thing is I want, I don't have a big sales team. I want basically my clients to be my sales team. Like I want my clients to sing my praises, know who I am. That way, when anyone talks about health insurance or questions anything related to health insurance, they say, hey, I got a guy, here's his information, and he'll be happy to help you. And so that's what I tell my clients all the time, like, hey, I'm still looking for new people to help. And so, but it takes time to get that. I was telling one of my new agents the other day, my number one referral partner right now was a $3 lead who never bought insurance from me, who ended up going back to work. He's an HR manager at a really big corporation, but was about to step away about 8 or 9 years ago. $3 lead, bought it, talked to him, we hit it off. Every single person who retires from this company, I'm not even going to say the name because I don't want anybody to try to steal it. Every single person who retires from this company gets my business card, say, hey, this is our guy who takes care of all of our retirees for benefits. So if somebody's new into the company and they need they make them wait, I think 60 days for insurance. But my biggest lead out, probably my most profitable lead partner ever was a $3 lead who just happened to shoot him a couple text messages, contact me back. We hit it off. And, I probably made $100,000 off this one guy.
Well, I know you've done a good job of building relationships with people. Didn't you have an opportunity working? I mean, it wasn't even local, but I think it was like the Detroit Fire Department or something at one point.
Oh yeah, I do the benefits for the Wayne County Police Department somehow. And it was just a cheap lead from a lady who was retiring from the police department. They've got some tricky things going on where they don't pay into Social Security. And so there was a lot of questions. She went to quite a few other people trying to find answers for something. And it's something that I honestly didn't know. I just had to do a little research on that exact situation because they don't pay into Medicare or Social Security, so they have to pay for their Medicare Part A, which is crazy to me. So I was kind of helping her figure that out. And then she went to her HR lady with some other questions who then ended up contacting me. And so now I do a Zoom call with them at least twice a year, kind of explaining to the officers who are retiring what that looks like when they retire, what their options are for health insurance and for Medicare. But yeah, I've never met any of them. And, I probably help out a dozen of them per year, I would say. But again, it was another one that it was a lead. And so all these people that you're talking to right now, I mean, you need to think of them as, hey, especially if you get somebody who knows you, likes you, trusts you. And if you're a new agent, just as many of those relationships as you can build, just ends up being a good thing and can definitely have opportunities down the road.
Yeah, I think you're really good at that, Derek. You've done an awesome job. And I see you just engage with people around you and the community around you. I went to a Notre Dame game with you. I remember a number of years ago, and like you were like a celebrity walking in there. You knew everybody and their brother, and everybody was high-fiving you and shaking your hand and stuff. And I'm like, man, he's a local celebrity, and I didn't even know this. So, but you've built relationships with people around you where you live and work and spend your time, and I think you've done an awesome job of that.
Yeah, and that's it. Thank you. But I think another thing that all of you guys need to do is, reach out to those friends, family. Like, if everybody on your Facebook page doesn't know that you sell health insurance, I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, everyone needs to know what you guys are doing. And I even hesitated with that at first, like until like I felt like I knew everything, like I was hesitant to like talk to my family, talk to my friends about insurance. But then once I really kind of understood this business and like how much help I could bring to people, like I want everyone to know what I do. I mean, I wear my health market shirts everywhere I go. I want people to, kind of ask me what I do. I love being on an elevator with someone or, running into someone and, having them ask that question because it's just an opportunity to, potentially help more people. And very few places can you really help somebody and make the amount of money that we can make here.
Let's talk just real quickly about that. So, I mean, 10 years ago, you started off making zero. And what does the trajectory look like over the years? Like, I'm not asking for specific numbers, but maybe tell the story a little bit about what the income's done over
I
the years.
mean, I probably made 50 grand my first year, and I thought I was like the most wealthy person in the world off that first $50,000. I'll never forget like that first check that would come in like in January, and I'm like, this is more money than I've ever had. Like I probably till that point, I probably never had more than $3,000 in my checking account. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm rich all of a sudden. So, I got to kind of tier 3, tier 4, probably within like 24 months or so. And then actually at one point had fallen back to tier 3 for about a month and just realized how much extra money that I lost by falling back a tier level and like doing those calculations. I'm like, I just lost like 2 grand because I was slacking. So my worst year like increase is probably 20% year over year. Like the money that we're making now is ridiculous. Our last celebration, actually one in Nashville, I'll never forget, Paul Kaler was talking, and there's about 100 agents in the room, and all of us had gotten there because of sales and for what we've done. And he was going over how much the average lawyer makes in Nashville. And so he was going through this whole thing. He's like, hey, I looked at all the data, the average lawyer in Nashville makes like $250,000. Those people, had to go to college, had to go to, law school afterwards. And then I had already talked to him before. He's like, Derek, hey, Mabry, how many years did you go to college? And I was like, 0. And he was like, this is the opportunity that we have where everyone in this room is making about 30% more than the average lawyer in Nashville makes. And we got some people who might have degrees, but then we got other people like Mabry who doesn't have a degree. He's like, this, you can make this whatever you want. And that's really what I was looking for, finding something where, I was getting paid based on what I could bring to the table.
Yeah. It was cool yesterday. I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but we were just talking about vehicles, and Derek recently bought a new vehicle and talked about the fact that he was able to write a check for it, and that the dealership was actually the salesman was kind of a little punchy with him because he wasn't financing it and he wasn't doing all these things, and that's where they make their money, right? They don't make money. You always think walking in and paying cash for something that's what people want, but in the car business, they want you to finance that thing for as long as they can. And so Derek was just talking about how the guy was actually a little bit rude. I'm just going to so, hey, I'll talk a little bit about your storefront. So you started off in a back office in Ray's storefront early in your career, and I know it was very inexpensive and it served its purpose. But then you made a pretty sizable investment, and you and Tony decided to go into honestly what I would say is our flagship storefront today. Across the territory. And I don't want to diminish any other storefronts that are out there because we've got some great storefronts. But if you guys haven't had a chance to check out what Derek and Tony and Zach's now kind of in there, but Derek and Tony are kind of the two guys that are the leaseholders on this thing. It's a beautiful office at the corner of Fur and Day Road. Is that Mishawka or Granger address? Mishawka, right?
Yeah, Mishawka.
Yeah. So you just want to talk through that progression a little bit, because I know that was a big step for you just financially to be able to make that investment. But then I also know there's been some real significant increases in sales and things since you made that choice as well.
Yeah, so I was in Ray's office for probably about 7, 8 years. I can see Mac right there. There's like a little cubby hole behind Mac next to the bathroom. That was my office for 8 years. It was a very awkward office. There was like 3 doors. It was funny because I had somebody in here a couple months ago, and she came in my office. She was like looking around. She's like, I always stayed and worked with you and bought all these things from you because I thought you were poor, like based on your old office. She goes, now that I say this nice new shiny place, maybe I should cancel some of these additional things that I have with you. But no, one of the best investments I've ever made was this storefront. When I was looking at the numbers going into it, like trying to justify, basically an extra $2,000 a month into this property, kind of scared me at the beginning. But it's probably the best investment that I've made. Just having a place where clients want to come and just trying to make it like the hub for all of my new agents was really my goal. I kind of became a sales leader the exact same time that we signed the lease. So it's been just a huge bump in my business, and my sales have definitely improved quite a bit. And I want to be here. I mean, it's a nice, beautiful, shiny office. It's mine. Where it's always tricky when you're renting from someone. You don't want to step on somebody's toes or do the wrong thing. But having a place that's your own, that you can make it whatever you want. I got a putting green right behind me, and so it's just been a huge blessing and a huge uptick. And it really shows, like when my clients are in here, I want to show them like the best experience that I can. Because that's really one of the things that maybe sets us apart from our peers is providing that best experience and that best service for your client. And so I think having a nice office and taking care of your clients definitely helps there.
Well, I know you take this to the next level as far as that client experience is concerned. You and I had a conversation a week or two ago, and you were just talking about getting some higher end, really comfortable, maybe even massage chairs for clients to sit in when they came in and sat down across from you. I love that thought process on like, how do I deliver an exceptional experience every single time a client engages with me? And you're taking it to the next level when you're thinking about massage chairs in your office. But I like the thought on that,
Yeah, I thought about a bar as well, but then I didn't know where that could turn. All of a sudden, I'd be having cocktails at lunch, and I didn't think that was a good idea, but it still may be on the table. But yeah, I mean, a lot of that came to me like after I got this office, and I've already told this story, but the MC or the comedian that we had at that celebration in Italy, and he was telling that story about Captain Denning, who was a pilot. And for those of you who were there or haven't heard the story, I don't do it justice. But this comedian who was working at our event, he said took 300 flights last year. And so he was going on to a Delta flight a few years ago, and the pilot was there shaking his hand, asked him a couple questions, said, where are you going? Who are you going to see? Thanked this guy. I can't remember even the comedian's name. I think his name's John. Thanked John for like going on to the flight and flying Delta. And then, so as the plane was ready to take off, the pilot got on the speaker and he said, I hope we get there safely. And, I just wanted to let everybody know that this is my second flight. And I pray that we all get there. And then he said, I'm just messing with you guys. It's the second flight today. We're going to be flying at 43,000 feet. The flight time's 2 hours and 12 minutes. And I've been a pilot for 47 years, and so like everybody kind of did one of these. But then during that flight, he gave John like a handwritten card, and it said, hey, hope you get home safe to, I don't remember his kid's name, Sherry and Patty. Hope you get home safe. Thank you for flying Delta. And then like shook his hand when he walked off the plane. The guy was like, that was like the best experience that I've ever had. And so he found this guy and he emailed him and he's like, hey, I just, really appreciate you. And like, that was the best experience that I've ever had. And then, so every time that John went to go book a flight, he was like me, like whenever I'm booking flights, like, oh, Spirit Airline, $12 flight. Yeah, I'm going to take that one. And he was like, so I totally stopped doing that. And I would only fly Delta. He goes, and I've only flown Delta ever since because I just wanted to have the chance to see that, that pilot one more time. And so like kind of thinking of that like my own business, I'm like, there's no difference between me or Cujo or, anybody, but I want to have people wanting to come see me. I want to give such a good experience for every single client that they want to come back to see me. They want to have their friends and their family come see me. And that's just part of my sales process. I'm every single person that comes in here, I'm like, hey, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm going to educate you. I'm going to show you every single option that's available to you. And I would do you an injustice if I didn't show you everything. I'm going to explain it. I'm here to help. I'm like your HR person for anything health insurance related. But at the end of the day, if you don't buy anything, that's totally your decision. There's no pressure here. I'm here to educate you and to help you. And if helping you is enrolling you into a plan, great. But if not, that's fine. I want to educate you and make sure that you're in the right spot. And so just kind of turning the tables on, I mean, that's probably a sales tactic, but I try to make it a non-sales tactic where my whole thing and what I'm trying to show every client is education, basically. I'm like, hey, this is confusing. You've never had to purchase insurance on your own. You've had insurance from your employer, for the last 30 years or whatever the scenario is. Nobody goes to school for health insurance except for me. I went to school for health insurance, and that's where I'm going to kind of come in and kind of help you figure out this process. But yeah, just trying to give my client the best experience that I can. I want to make it easy on them. And it's really ever since, seriously, like talking to that guy in Italy, like the last probably 3-4 months, like my numbers definitely year over year over. And most of it is just my mentality of like every single person who comes in here, it's like the Super Bowl. Like I'm going to give them my best effort. I'm going to show them every single thing. I'm not going to shortchange anyone. And I'm going to run the same process for every single client.
So this is a really good segue into where I want to spend the last 20 minutes, and it's really focusing on cross-selling. You are one of the best in the territory and one of the best in the country when it comes to cross-selling, and you do it so effortlessly. But do you want to just maybe start off real quickly by talking to everybody about why supplemental and or life insurance are such an important part of your portfolio?
Yeah, I bet I've done probably $300,000 in hospitalized cancer and heart attack and stroke claims so far this year, and see the financial impact that it's made for those people. I'll never forget my first one was my 3rd grade teacher. First cancer claim I ever had was my 3rd grade teacher. And it like brings me to tears every time I see her, every time I talk to her. It probably would have ruined her financially. It would have ruined her financially. I mean, she had just retired. She had just come to me, very limited savings, had just had a divorce. And what that did for her treatments and for all the costs that were associated with her cancer treatment, like probably saved her from a financial ruin, especially after just retiring. It was just such a big impact. So now every single client, I when I started, like I would see somebody come in, I'm like, there's no way this guy's going to buy a cancer plan. And, sometimes I would shortchange it and I would try to, fly through the appointment and I might not even bring it up. But really after that happened, which was probably like 6-7 years ago, I was still doing good in supplemental sales till then, but like the light clicked and I was like, there's no way that I'm going to allow somebody to walk out of here without at least presenting it to them, showing them the pros of what it can do for them, showing them the average cost of cancer, showing them like what kind of impact it would have. And it's been huge for me actually seeing that. And it's, until that point, I never had a story. And so like, I was always like listening to like Ray or somebody else like have their story. So I was always stealing somebody's story. Like I always stole these stories that, that Ray had. But like once it hits home and like once you have one on your own and you're getting thank you cards and birthday cards from this one person now, like every single year, it just made a big impact. And it's just such a huge part of what we do. Most of these clients that you're working with, they almost think like you're just trying to sell them something extra, where, they're just used to just picking out a health insurance policy with their HR director in their office, to check sheet. Okay, I want this plan. I want the dental. I want the vision. Oh, all the other stuff. I don't need it. But if you really do a good job on the front end in your fact finding, if you do a good job of just positioning yourself to show the products and kind of how it all correlates and how kind of when I wrap everything up, everything just kind of flows because I'm showing them on the front end, hey, here's your risk. It's, it's 1 out of 2 men, 1 out of 3 females over the age of 55 get cancer. So I'm like, hey, it's either you. If it's a guy, I'm like, hey, it's either you or me. The average cost of cancer is $35,000. So as I'm going through all of this in my presentation for life, which I do for every client, and then when I'm showing them my solution at the end, hey, remember I told you, what's the average cost of cancer? 30. That's why we're going to do the $35,000 critical illness package. That's why we're going to do, the accident plan. So it really kind of just all comes together, but you have to have a passion for it, and you have to, like, most of your clients are just going to obviously push back, and again, I always say, hey, I'm not here to sell you anything. But that's the one thing I do push back on. If they're like, hey, I don't need it, cancer doesn't run in my family, and I'm like, hey, the odds of cancer being hereditary against from like outside factors, it's such more likely to have some kind of outside factors, the reason why you got cancer. Kind of just go over like what the average cost of cancer is, the other things that they might run into, might have to go to Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, they might be out of network, before the donut hole ends, hey, you could fall into the donut hole, you can run into expensive medications. My own grandmother went down to Baylor University for like, I think every month for like 2 years when she was battling pancreatic cancer 15 years ago, before I knew anything about insurance or cancer plans or anything like that. And just, thank God that my grandfather was able to pay for those treatments, because none of it was covered under health insurance. They had to pay for room, board, they had to do all of that. Then Baylor University would pay for like the treatment while she was there. But then there's other medications and other things. And, they gave her like 3 months to live when it happened. And she lasted, I think she had lived almost 4 years. But from a financial standpoint, like what that did to my grandfather and what it would do to most like probably 95% of the families wouldn't have been able to do that. And they, she wouldn't have gotten a few extra years in that scenario. So you just have to have a passion for it. You're doing your client a huge injustice by not showing it. Like, shame on anyone who, if you don't bring it up to every single client, you're probably not in the right field, honestly. Like, you have to have a passion for it, and you have to, it's pretty much a non-negotiable, is what I tell my agents. Like, hey, if you're not offering this, probably not the right place for you to be. Because if you really cared about your clients and you really wanted to help them, you would be showing that.
Yep. Well, and I really believe that it's important for us. I think from a sales perspective, especially new salespeople think I've got to pitch all the high points of the product that I'm selling. I think it's equally important to point out the gaps and the holes and the flaws in the base underlying health insurance, and that gives you the opportunity then to come in with those products and fill the gaps and fill the holes. And I agree with you. That's one of the things I struggle with the most when we look at our overall territory rankings within the team, within the territory. There's this this group of agents, yourself included, that are supplemental and life insurance are obviously a part of everything that you do. And then there's even a larger segment of the agents that are in our territory that it's obvious based on the numbers that they're not even talking about it or showing it or presenting it. And so that's one thing I think you've always done probably better than just about anybody else, is you go in and you show, instead of trying to simplify it, you show them all of their options. You show them all of the different things that they could possibly, purchase to fill those gaps and holes. And I think that's worked really well for you. Are you in a position, I know we talked a little bit about sharing some of your templates and things. Do you want to share your screen and maybe walk through with the last 15 minutes we have, some of the things you do from a template perspective in Quote Connect?
Yeah, let me just show you guys because it will kind of tie in, I think, if I show you at least my presentation, and you guys all know the presentation, so I'll buzz through it. But, as I'm going through this with my clients and kind of explaining health insurance, explaining health markets, that my service is no charge. Again, I'd say this multiple times, hey, I'm here to educate you and kind of show you all the different options, especially being that we represent all the major carriers. It makes it easy for me to show you everything. Health insurance can be confusing. Either you can try to be the expert on this, or you can go through somebody like me. Again, my service is free. I'm here to kind of help you. And then as I'm going through, hey, here are all the 3 different components of health insurance. I almost kind of purposely here try to make it a little bit confusing, but then kind of come back to, hey, I'm here to educate you and show you all those different options, and then I really talk about maximum out of pocket. But then once I go into the supplemental portion, I'm really saying, hey, most of us are paycheck to paycheck. The average cost of cancer is $35,000. The average cost if you walk into the emergency room is $1,500. So like I'm hitting all of those points. And then so then as I'm showing them a solution, I'm basically have the templates built out. So then that way it's like plug and play. Give me 1 second. Let me I timed out. Let me log back in.
You're good.
But yeah, again, because I want everything to like kind of tie together at the end so that my recommendations make sense. Um,
So while you're doing that, I just want to answer a quick question. Kevin asked, do we have a product manager for United Health One SUPs? And do we have an approved Clico SUP PowerPoint? I guess I don't know exactly what you're looking for, Kevin. I would say on the uh1.com/broker website, there are a lot of resources available on there. They can be used. If you go into, I think it's the resources section in the top right-hand corner, you can pull down by state a lot of different pieces that could probably be used for that. So hopefully that answered your question.
all right. All right. So you guys, what I've done is I've kind of built templates for like every different scenario, just because I want to be able to quickly, especially for a new agent, I want to be able to quickly get a quote out to a client. I know that we kind of like talk about, especially new agents, like a two-step process, which is great, but like I want to be an expert. Like I want to have all of this down. So I built out templates for like every single carrier, like Indiana and Michigan, carrier by carrier, and then with all of my carriers. And so I pretty much built out the same one for every single one. So let me show you guys how mine work. And I'll send you guys mine, but like create your own template, like know how to do it, know which products that you like to show. Because again, what's great about health markets is you can make this whatever you want. I mean, you can sell whatever you want, but like, especially if you're new, it's like when I started, Ray always told me SWAT, sell what's available today. Right. And so like, I knew these 3 products like the back of my hand, and they're still basically the 3 products that I show every single client. So when you're in here, if you select a specific template, it will change. Like, so if I had a 49120 zip code in here, it would show me Michigan carriers. But I go directly into my templates when I'm getting the information ready for a client, and I'm selecting that template. And then it's going to basically show me a bronze, silver, gold with the set packages that I like, and that I recommend. And so it just really makes it easy for a new agent to not forget to show a specific product. Like, especially as a new agent, there's so many things you got to remember, whether it's passwords or your process or the different plans, and there's just so many different things there. If you're like using these templates, I just feel like you can't forget anything, right? So it's pretty much everything there. So, I always show all my clients the least expensive policy. So in Indiana, it's the Anthem Bronze Pathway. It's the least expensive plan. I'll typically show them like a middle of the road plan. If, for instance, if they're taking some high-end medications and they need to have those medications filled and before the deductibles hit, then I go into a silver plan. And then I just want to show them the most expensive plan that's available. Like here in St. Joe County, it's this CareSource diabetic plan. And obviously I never try to sell the gold plan, but I always tell them like, hey, I'm not a crook. I'm not going to try to say, hey, Joe, spend as much money as you can, but I do like to show them the least expensive plan and the most expensive plan in my quotes. But then when I do that, I'm going over, the recommendations that I make, and like, hey, as we talked about, every plan has a very similar max amount of pocket, being that, you're pretty healthy, especially if, let's just say it's an SEP and they're starting coverage September 1st, I would say, hey, the odds of you hitting this deductible in 4 months are obviously pretty slim. Obviously when you have 12 months to hit a deductible, you're more likely to do that. But in this scenario, if your coverage is starting September 1st, I would think that the bronze plan with a high deductible would make sense. Now, remember what I told you earlier, hey, the average cost just to walk into the emergency room because of an accident is about $1,500. So I built in the accident plan that would pay you $1,500 if you had to go to the emergency room. It also covers it also will pay you $15,000 if you get admitted to the hospital. Now, like I personally like don't pull up the brochures and go over them like line by line. Most of your clients are confused anyways, and like by showing them sometimes too much information, I feel like sometimes they'll just say, you know what, hey, I need to think about this, or I'm not ready to pull the trigger. But so I show them the $15,000 accident plan, and then I say, hey, remember what I said? The average cost of cancer is $35,000. That's why we're going to do the $35,000 critical illness package. You know, everybody wants dental and vision. I don't go into too much detail on dental and vision, but I sell a ton of dental and vision. If you're not offering it, you're crazy, because it's honestly a really good dental and vision plan. I even have vision insurance personally from my wife's employer, and I still have a Chesapeake vision plan because it's such a good value. So dental and vision, and then life insurance. And, you know, I'm telling all these people, hey, you know, you're doing your client a disservice by not offering life insurance. I stink at life insurance. So like, that's one thing, like when I look in the mirror, like, that's kind of my big next step is to do a better job on life insurance. But these are the templates that I build out. So like, even if my assistant is like, if I'm busy, somebody needs a quick quote, my assistant's there, she's like, hey, which template do I use? I'm like, hey, I know all of this guy's doctors are in Ambetter, so let's do this same template with Ambetter. Because again, I've kind of built them out, and I think you guys should as well. I'll send you guys mine if you want them. But I even built them out like carrier for carrier. So if I know that somebody wants an HSA approved plan, I've got an HSA template right there. Okay. I know if somebody, like if it's somebody who lives in Berrien County in Michigan and they need to come down into Indiana, Ambetter is pretty much your only option. So I have an Ambetter template. And all of those templates though have the exact same structure of the way that I look at the plans. And so let me go back real quick. So again, you know, I don't have too much variance between like the critical illness packages. I do put it in there just so if somebody says, hey, and what if I need a little bit more than 35,000? Like, I at least like to have that number there. So I have a 50,000 in my quote. And then if somebody's not going to qualify from a health perspective, I always put like the GI guaranteed issued option, just so I have the numbers. Because again, I can kind of pick and choose and move these around. But especially for a new agent to have this ready. When I was new, I went and I printed off this before every single appointment because I didn't know what I was doing and I needed something as a guide. And if I had this as a guide, this P4L view right there in Quote Connect, it made a huge difference for me. Is I just had something to go back to as I was stumbling on whatever the question may or may not have been. I just always kind of used that as a crutch and had it ready. Because, you know, for a lot of the new people, you're meeting people in a coffee shop, you're meeting people at their home, you're usually not in front of your computer like I am. And so I only run appointments in my office now. My rent's high, so I feel like I got to do as much as I can over here. But I run everything in my office, more so for the experience, I guess I would say, because, hey, I've got a nice office, you know, I want to be able to, when every single one of my clients like walks out, you know, they get a health markets folder where I say, hey, when you come back, I want you to bring this folder. I want you to put all your health insurance, you know, whether your cards or your letters you got from the marketplace, I want you to have all of that handy. You know, I'm giving them, you know, all of these different things that I've gotten from, you know, marketing on demand. You know, this one is like emergency contact. I give everyone, you know, a medication keeper. Just as many things as I have with my name on it. You know, I don't want my client to forget who I am. And again, somebody, I don't know who said it, hey, once you see somebody's name, I don't know at the time, 6, 7 times, it's, you know, it's hard to forget it. So if I kind of plaster my face on everything, like these are bags that I just found in the resource center. They're much smaller than I thought they were. I thought I was gonna be able to put that folder in there. They're obviously much smaller, like a lunch bag basically. So I'm gonna make my kid take this to lunch every day for this year. So I bought 2,000. But again, anything that you can do just to remind the client of who you are, I think really helps. And again, just kind of giving that like best experience that you can is a big deal.
Well, and I think to deliver that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, Kevin McIntyre got me on these Google reviews. And so like when I have a client sitting down in my office, Like my goal is to like wow them, to make them feel really comfortable. And then at the end, take a picture of that QR code and give me a 5-star review. So I just started it like a week ago. I don't know. I think I've gotten like 4 or 5 like Google reviews since then. But again, just another way to kind of just solidify yourself as their agent, because you know you don't want it to be in that time where you know somebody sees a commercial for health insurance, they can't remember who their agent is, you know, so they're just calling some random Joe off the street. You know, you want them to know your name.
Yeah. One thing, going back to your templates, and I'll candidly, 23 years doing this, I've never used the templates like you do. I set them up a little differently, and there's no right or wrong way, I wouldn't say. But one thing I like about what Derek does is he's got all of that on one page. So it's really almost like a price list or a price sheet, or I mean, it's almost got a spreadsheet type look to it and feel to it, where, you know, if they want 35,000 or 50,000, they only qualify for 10,000 of critical illness, it's all right there. And I could even see, you know, with many of you, an opportunity to go through and, you know, if it's on paper, circling the ones that they want and building the plan right on the piece of paper, them, you know, right there. And then you can go back into Quote Connect and delete and reorganize into one quote exactly what the, you know, the benefit levels are that they have. I see you've got the, obviously the accident wise, the critical illness wise, and the dental wise on here. And then you also have life insurance down at the bottom. So it's just forcing you to have the conversation because you have all 4 of those products on there.
Yeah, I think if you guys have it even just somewhat ready before your appointment, now obviously things are gonna change in your appointment, but if you have that ready, I mean, I just think it'll just make a huge difference in your sub sales because you're not forgetting to do that, and you're not selling it as a package. But I can't tell you how many times like I've shown somebody this, like, yeah, just quote one, I'll do all of that, just like you said, $230 deal. But when you're breaking it down like line by line for somebody, and you're like, okay, this is $70, this is $50, this is 20, you know, if like you're doing that and like building it with them a la carte, like, and they're watching you do it, I think they're gonna be more inclined to say, man, $70, you know, forget that critical illness package. But then when they're kind of looking at it, again, you're not selling it as a package, but when they're looking at it like, oh, I can get all of this for $200 a month, compared to, geez, just the gold plan is $943 a month with no additionals. I mean, it really makes it easy and kind of sells itself.
Well, and as you scroll down through that on option number 1, you know, it's 0 monthly premium on the health, but then you've got $158 of subs and like 70, what, $5 of life insurance. I mean, you've got $225 worth of supplemental and life insurance, you know, built in kind of into that particular quote. Obviously, if they just say take, you know, quote 1, we'll take it and go with it. Not only are they well protected, but you're going to be paid pretty well on that one too.
Yeah. And so, even for you guys that are doing Medicare this year, like I have like the same thing kind of built out for Medicare, but then you gotta, because Medicare can be confusing, but then you basically just have to go in and just put in like the Medicare Advantage plan that you are recommending, then like the exact number for their Med Sup and for their PDP. But I kind of do the same thing. But then I also have a template, me and Tony named it the trifecta, which on any Medicare plan is accident-wise, hospital-wise, and cancer. So I do the same thing. So like Lori knows, hey, if I got a 64-year-old coming in, like she'll even print off the template, have it ready for me, and have the print off already done. So like as I'm going through with my client and I'm like, hey, you know, here's what your risk is on, you know, 20% of your chemotherapy, like on a Medicare Advantage plan. I already have that number printed off and right there. I was like, hey, remember earlier when I said the average cost of cancer is $35,000? Here's how much a $35,000 cancer policy will cost you. And I already have it all done. So I'm not going back and trying to, you know, sweat and trying to type all that information in and get the quote. I already have it prepared because again, I want to give the best experience that I can. And if I'm prepared, it just makes everything run much smoother.
I really like how you're tying your benefits that you're quoting to the data or the numbers, statistics that are in your protection for life presentation. I think that's very well thought out as well. I know a couple of you have asked for those protection for life slides. I hope you all have them because we had distributed those to you, but I'll send out, Derek, if you want to send me your slideshow, we'll bundle mine, yours, and maybe the one that has all the slides in it and send it out to the entire team so you guys have that. I would tell you when you're building out that protection for life slideshow, you want to make that your own. New agents, we've asked you to do that in your new business setup checklist. We want you to build it and become really familiar with it. I mean, this is a guy who's tier 4, by over double what he needs to be tier 4, and he's still using protection for law. He's still doing a fact finding experience. He's still utilizing that same process. And so I'd encourage you guys, you got to build that out, and it's got to be your own at some level. Don't manufacture slides though. Use the slides and you can rearrange them. You can put your about me slide in that protection for life. But I do think back to what Cav teaches. Some people are auditory, but other people are visual. They have to see that stuff to even be able to retain it. So whether you're doing it, on your computer, you're doing it in a flip pitch book type environment, I think it's really important to do that protection for life, and then also be able to do it. And I think Derek talked about this in our training last week with the new agents. You also have to be able to do that exact same protection for life, but do it completely verbally with no visual aids, because we do sell over the phone at times too. Live transfers and things like that. So that's just something you've got to master, and you've got to make it your own and be really, really good at it. So Derek, well, I appreciate you being with us today. I do just want to shout out, you've got a team that you're building. I see Cujo and Seth and Bryson on the call. I would challenge you gentlemen, be in the office with Derek. If you guys aren't sitting in there, I mean, you've got one of the best in the business as your sales leader. If you're not sitting next to him in that office, watching what he does multiple days a week, I think you're missing an enormous opportunity. I know we've got more new agents that have started to come in there. Zach Spalding's working out of your office. I think Frank Sutherland has spent some time there. We've got other agents that are starting, to show up. Just being around people who are being successful and watching what they do. I guarantee you, if you're on Derek's team and you want to sit next to him and watch him in appointments until you have mastered this, I know he's all game for that. So I'd encourage you. I'd push you. Somebody's sitting over there. Who's in the corner?
No,
I can't see what it is.
Cole's sitting here kind of just shadowing me today. So yeah, just kind of doing the same thing.
Well, do you have any final thoughts, especially for new agents who maybe aren't yet where they want to be in the business, before we wrap things up?
Man, just go after it. You have to have the passion to want to help people. And you guys have so much knowledge, and you guys have already went through all this testing, all these training, put it to use, bust your butt to do whatever you have to do to get in front of as many people as you can and help as many people as you can. And everything's just going to follow. Your income's going to rise. You're going to be happier. I mean, just everything's going to get better. But when you start, you have to put in more time. And you just have to want it a little bit more and work a little bit harder than everybody else. So this career and this job can be whatever you want it to be, which is something that I love about health markets. But you really have to have the passion to want to help, and you just have to have a good work ethic. And if you just do those two things, can't go wrong.
Yep, I totally agree. I think about our tier 4 agents. I think last year our tier 4 agents averaged almost $450,000 in income. That was the average income that they generated, and climbing by 20% year over year. There is a huge opportunity out there if you guys want to chase it. So Derek, I appreciate you, man. Appreciate you being here and chatting with us. Everybody who joined us today, thank you for being here. We're going to do next week. I've got Ray Plagans, probably the most prolific writer that our territory has ever seen, coming in. Mac's excited about that, obviously. She's working in the midst of the chaos that surrounds Ray Plagans, and helping to manage that. But I think it'll be good to hear from somebody who has really crushed this business for a lot of years. So Ray will be our guest speaker next week. If you guys need anything this week, don't hesitate to reach out. I appreciate y'all being here. Take care.